Okay, so it is time for an annual video for those of you who are nosy and like the cha-ching sound, which is the annual income wrap-up. How did I do here on YouTube, as well as with my books? These videos always bring in some new people, so let me give a very brief overview of how we got here. My name is Lydia Foxglove, and I have been a mostly full-time author since 2009. I started out in young adult traditional publishing. In 2016, I moved into indie publishing, particularly in 2017, when I started really just writing to market, writing paranormal romance, fairy tale romance, steamy, researching the market regularly just to see what was selling and trying to replicate that within the parameters of things that I could actually enjoy writing at the same time, because it's hard to write to market if you hate what you're doing. And I was writing very fast and I was enjoying myself, but I was working very hard. And at the same time, since I was a kid, I had this fantasy world in my head. I had been developing it. In 2016, my first indie publishing effort was some books set in this world, which did pretty well, still some of my best-selling books ever. But I wasn't really able to replicate it. I realized that not enough of those stories were written to market, so I had to set it aside, make that money, really be on the Amazon treadmill. And as of 2 years ago, I was hitting a point of serious burnout, and I had also really been watching a lot of YouTube. So I decided to try a pivot, which was to start a YouTube channel and try to get it monetized and use the channel as a way of talking about my quirky little fantasy world, as well as just all the things I've learned over my many years of writing about writing itself and the creative life and the emotions that it brings up and how to manage finances, all that stuff. I felt like I had a lot to talk about. And I also thought, even if the audience for my real beloved fantasy books remains small, there will be at least people that I get to talk to them about it and just, dig into all that stuff. It was something that I thought that I would enjoy more than writing the romance, particularly because writing romance was sucking up my entire writer brain and I had nothing left to give my fantasy world. So it was a real risk. However, I didn't know that much about YouTube, and I also had no idea how long it would take to get monetized or how anything would go. In my peak year of indie romance, I made $100,000, and generally my average was around $70,000 a year. So I am making way less on YouTube, but I didn't know, would I make anything? Would YouTube and my off-market quirky fantasy books, would they make anything? Would this work at all? But my best friend had almost died of cancer at the same time, and I had this feeling of if this is your life's dream and you have some money saved up, why don't you try it? See how it goes, see if it's sustainable. Just give yourself 2 years to see if you can make it, and be willing to draw down on some of those finances if needed, just to see if you can make it over the hump. So I have a video with last year's roundup of how this all went. I'm also going to do a video that's talking more about the actual pursuing your dreams and what I learned part. That will be later this month. But this one's just about how the finances went. Did I make enough? Now that I'm at the 2-year mark, did I make enough to keep doing this? The short answer, as you probably gathered if you are a regular viewer, is yes. I've become increasingly committed to this, and I've been having a blast. But I definitely ain't making $70,000 a year. I can also tell you that. So I didn't really know how it would look until I really sat down and dug in. Would it be worse than I thought? Would it be better than I thought? Let's talk about the numbers. And at the same time, the other piece to this is that around the same time that I started working on this channel, I also tried to do a no-buy year. And I was really looking at my budget and just really trying to, I've always been frugal, but I really tried to trim it down as much as I possibly could without sacrificing the small pleasures in life. It's hard to trim your budget down to absolutely nothing. Some people can do it, but I still really treasure my daily kombucha and my daily cup of hot cocoa and my once a week takeout, and trying to buy good quality food. I love food. If you haven't gathered, that's like my biggest weakness. My biggest weakness in my budget is food and buying records. So those were my weak points, but I did get the budget down considerably as well. First, let's recap. How did the first year go? That was the year that ended a year ago. I decided to revisit these numbers a little bit because last year I had included bank interest as part of my income because like returns on interest were pretty high last year. So they made up like a decent-ish chunk. But I decided to take them out because for one thing, interest rates are going down. And for another thing, as I'm using up some of my savings, I'm slowly not making as much interest. So that's not like a sustainable part of income really. So I decided to remove that from the equation. So if we look at that, last year, my income from my books and YouTube was $22,551. And I spent $6,085 more than that, not including what I would have to pay in income tax. So I did run a deficit in my income, but it wasn't catastrophic. Like I'm starting a new business, so I kind of expected it to be a little bit in the red the first year. It actually went way better than I expected it to. I frankly thought that I would probably use $10,000 of my savings at least in that first year because I thought it was going to be a rocky start. So we'll take that. So my income comes from a number of different sources, and that's one reason that it often feels like I'm barely making anything. I have my books. I have my back catalog of my romance books, which is almost 50 books. Like I was writing a lot. I was writing very quickly. And then I have like my Hidden Lands books that are the books of my heart. I released 2 this year, and the whole Hidden Lands catalog, currently amounts to 7 books. There's the original trilogy that I kicked off my indie career with, the Cursed Soul trilogy. There's Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy, which I released in the middle of doing other stuff because it was a bolt of inspiration, so I wrote it anyway. There's Wanted, Brooding Man, Tragic Past, which is kind of a standalone follow-up to Doll Girl. The Broken Queen, which is the earliest one in the timeline and is a bit of a bridge book when I thought I still was trying to really write to market, but I really wanted to make the Hidden Lands work again. So it's kind of got a lot of romantasy tropes, but doesn't really read like a romantasy because I'm not really a tropes writer. And then I have the Potion Dealers, which is the new series I started this year that is very me. So my catalog for the Hidden Lands generally pretty small, but those are like the new releases that are fueling little bursts of fresh income. So I have that. All my books are on Amazon and they are wide. They're on Barnes & Noble, Google, Kobo, Apple, some like different lending services and foreign retailers, Smashwords, they're everywhere. So that income comes in from various places. I have some audiobooks out. I have one I paid for myself, and I have some that were purchased by Tantor and they pay royalties. I get money through YouTube AdSense. I have YouTube memberships. I have a Patreon and a Substack. My memberships run through YouTube, Patreon, and Substack. They all get the same benefits, but that way people have different options because people like different things. And occasionally I get sponsorships and like affiliate income. So it's pretty normal in a month for my income to come in through like 10 different payments at least, which can make it very hard to track how much I'm actually making unless I really sit down and crunch the numbers. January of 2025 was about when I started doing YouTube memberships. Up until then, I had just Patreon and Substack. I was trying to move people off of YouTube so that I could have a little more control over my list and not just rely on Google and YouTube. But I decided it is convenient for people to be able to watch my videos just through their YouTube account. So I might get some people that wouldn't otherwise sign up. So I started offering it through YouTube, and that did end up being by far my biggest growth category for memberships this year. And I also want to note, when I talk about how much I spent, it does not include, it's everything. It's what I put on my credit cards. and then pay off at the end of the month. What it does not include is the mortgage, which my partner pays, the water bill, which is like $50, and my health insurance, which is like $500. It also does not include income taxes, but it's pretty much everything else. So in January, I spent $2,748. That was a bit much, and the reason that it was so much is because I filled the fuel oil tank for $600, and I also got rabies shots for our new young cats. They are not outdoor cats, but you know, you're supposed to get rabies shots for them anyway, just in case they get out there in the wild, so I did pay for that. I also had a BookBub, just a small international one, but BookBub is like a mailing list that sends out like free or reduced price books, and they have the largest list like in the discount book promotion industry for both indie and traditionally published books. So getting a BookBub can be a nice boost, but you have to get accepted. They don't just take everybody. So I got accepted for an international BookBub, which was $114. So just like my regular spending was under $2,000. And I made $487 on Amazon, $187 on the wide retailers, $522 on YouTube, which is mostly AdSense revenue, but is also some memberships, and $430 on my Patreon and Substack, for a total of $1,626. I was running a deficit of $1,122. Capalia, not a great start to the year, but let's see how the rest goes. In February, I spent I wish I spent 200. In February, I spent $2,273. Had to pay the auto insurance, which is biannually. It was almost $500. And what did I make? I made $697 on my books. That started going up because of the BookBub. $232 on wide retailers, $405 on YouTube, and $515 on Patreon and Substack members, for a total of $1,849. And I ran a deficit of $424. So I was now about $1,500 in the hole for the year. In March, I spent $2,134. I spent a little money, like $200 on records that month. And I bought a big ass order of hot cocoa mix. Capalia. I am super addicted to Equal Exchange hot chocolate. It is very dark, almost like coffee, and it's fair trade. And I've determined that it is cheaper. If you were a dark chocolate addict of some snobbery, the cheapest way to get your daily dark chocolate fix is to make a cup of hot chocolate instead of buying chocolate bars, especially because that kind of restricts you portion-wise and you don't accidentally eat a whole bar of chocolate, as I am wont to do. So I spent $228 on hot chocolate, which was meant to last for like a year. I was particularly worried that chocolate prices would be affected by tariffs and climate conditions, and that it was only going to get more expensive to buy chocolate, so I might as well buy a ton of it. Capalia, stop walking around on my camera. And I made $707 on Amazon, $207 wide, $460 on YouTube, and $507 through Patreon and Substack, for a total of $1,881. Running a deficit of $253, and was now $1,800 in the hole for the year. It's not going great, but at least I was narrowing the gap. In April, I spent $2,011. Really didn't spend a lot of nonsense this month. My biggest splurge was that I got some nice quality markers from the local art store, which was going out of business. I spent $87 on those, and I also bought 2 window fans for $64 because I knew the heat was coming, and I've had trouble sleeping on those hot nights. I need a little air, but I did not want to put an air conditioning unit in my window because then the window is unusable unless you get somebody to take the AC unit out and I'm not strong enough to lift one. So yeah, that's that. My income for April, $634 on Amazon, $218 wide, $387 on YouTube, $580 on Patreon and Substack. And then I got my biannual life-saving payment from my agency that handled the audiobooks. So this is audiobook royalties, $2,239 in audiobook royalties for a total of $4,058. And I made a profit of $2,047 this month. Therefore, I was now $248 in the black. We love to see it. In May, I spent $2,516. And this month, I had a bit of a splurge month, probably in part because I got that sweet audiobook payment, and like mentally, sometimes when you get a big check, it's just hard not to think you should spend a little bit of it on yourself. So I spent $200 at the record store, and then I had just finished watching the Kaguya-sama Love is War anime on Crunchyroll, and I loved it, and I wanted to read the ending, so I filled in all the manga from Kaguya-sama that I didn't already have, and that was $125. I tried to buy the cheapest copies I could find, like ex-library copies and stuff, because I just wanted to read it, but it still costs some money. My income in May was $442 on Amazon and $201 wide. The book income was a struggling. YouTube was only $263. Also, oof. And Patreon and Substack, $554. For a total of $1,460, which was my worst month, just FYI. It's all up from here. So I was $1,056 in the hole, and we're now back in the hole in general to the tune of $800. Womp womp. But the Kaguya-sama manga was great, just saying. In June, I spent $1,518. Look at me. I was getting better at saving money in general, because this was one of my lowest spend months, like, in a long time. In 2024, my lowest spend month was $1,871. So I beat my record as far as like in recent years, when a lot of things have gone up in price. It was my lowest spend month in quite a long time. And even despite that, I spent $150 on records in this month, and my subscription to New York Magazine renewed for $60. So I actually spent some money on myself, and yet I still kept it that cheap. I don't know how I was so cheap this month. I really don't know. My income, meanwhile, $470 on Amazon, $246 wide, $430 on YouTube, and $518 Patreon and Substack. I also got some very nice sponsorship and affiliate money this month, but since I'm not supposed to disclose how much I make with sponsorships, I'm not including that in the totals. At the end of this video, I will give you a rough idea of how much I made in aggregate of multiple sponsorships, but I'm not going to count it on a month-by-month basis. So if we leave that out for now, I made $1,664 for a profit of $146 and a total in the hole of $660. Despite making so little money, I actually still managed to bank a little bit, so that's good. And of course, when I say bank, it's not like I really got to bank it, because I still had to pay the water bill and the health insurance and the taxes, but you know what I mean. In July, I spent $2,263. I was on an ElfQuest kick in July, and I spent $80 filling in some ElfQuest comics that I did not yet own. And I also bought a software called Recut, which all it does is you drop a video in there, and it takes out the pauses, and you can adjust the parameters of what what length of pause or what level of sound you are going to consider a pause. And it'll shorten your video by taking out all the pauses. I had looked into a lot of different options as to like, can AI edit my videos better? But I don't really want to use AI. But like editing was taking me a ton of time, just tweaking all the pauses. And one of our friends was like, why don't you just use AI to edit your videos? So I was like researching it to see if there was something that would do it for me. And I found Recut, which is just very simple software. It was not a subscription and it was not AI. It was just literally a software that takes out pauses. So I decided that was like the best option for me, especially because it doesn't take up a lot of room on my hard drive and my computer does not have a lot of space on it. And I could plug in like an extraneous drive, but then that's a whole other thing I have to make sure I always have, and that's dangling around. I just wanted the simplest possible option to remove the pauses. So I spent $129 on that, and it has been well worth the purchase. And also in July, I released The Potion Dealers. So it was my first book release in quite some time. I spent a pretty good bit of time marketing it as well. And that brought my book income up quite a bit for the month of July. I made $920 on Amazon, $341 wide, $472 on YouTube, and $504 on Patreon and Substack members, for a total of $2,246. So I ran a deficit of a mere $17 and was running an overall deficit of $680. In August, I spent $2,392. I spent another $140 on records. Those are a real weakness for me. My subscription to Enchanted Living renewed for $54. And I also spent $321 to renew our Biltmore passes, which so far we barely used because this year's been so busy, so that wasn't really the best decision. But in my head, I thought we could have these beautiful walks on the Biltmore estate for one more year before we start looking at moving back to Maryland. So we still have some time, and I'm hoping we still get to really get some like winter and spring walks at Biltmore. My income was $560 on Amazon, $403 wide, $727 on YouTube, and $534 on Patreon and Substack, for a total of $2,224. I ran a deficit of $168 for a total deficit of about $850 for the year. Now, around this time, this kind of late summer, like August, I was kind of looking at my YouTube numbers and thinking things are steady, but they're really not growing. And I haven't really been focusing on like tickling the algorithm very much. I haven't really been growing the channel. So I tried to like see what would happen if I really buckled down and tried to really feed the algorithm and also make a few extra videos per month. I knew it probably wouldn't be something I could do all the time, but I wanted to see if I could at least boost things a little bit. So starting in August and then particularly in September, I was really trying to make some videos that were the kind of things people would click on. Things that get people a little bit like saucy, which is kind of what works on YouTube. And I also, that was when the Audra Winter thing really blew up, and that was a big video for me talking about Audra Winter. That was like such a hot topic, and I really don't like to jump into those like gossip topics very much, but I did have some like, I felt real concrete things to say about the concept of releasing a story that you've been working on since you were a kid, since that's also my experience. So I did jump in on Audra Winter. That video did super well for me. But honestly, I had a lot of bangers in September. My spend, meanwhile, was only $1,471. What did I spend all that money on? What were all my expenses? I spent $56 on a vet bill. I think that was just like a shot for somebody or something. I don't remember. Donated a little money to my best friend's kids like fundraiser. Bought a book for $12. Bought some light bulbs for $11. So yeah, really, we kept it very minimalist in September. My income was $474 on Amazon, $218 wide, $1,390 in September. Yeah, which I guess actually that would have been for August videos, right? Because they pay me a month later. So I guess August really was when I like buckled down and focused. And $551 on Patreon and Substack. So my total earnings were $2,633. And that meant I got to bank $1,162, bringing me back in the black to the tune of $315. And guess what? We've got another audiobook payment coming. So in October, I spent $2,384. My Canvas subscription renewed, so that was like $120. But when I had to pay for some medical care out of pocket, because even though I've been paying all this money for this health insurance, my in-network doctors were not helpful at all when it came to perimenopause, so I just had to pay out of pocket to see somebody. Isn't America fantastic? My earnings for October were $729 on Amazon, $305 wide, $1,153 on YouTube, $584 on Patreon and Substack, and $1,711 in audiobook payments for a total of $4,482. That's $2,092 in excess for the month, and I was now $2,413 ahead. Yay! In November, I spent $1,436. I bought nothing, like nothing. If it wasn't food or regular expenses, there's nothing here. And I had also released Wanted, Brooding Man, Tragic Past, my second book release in October, so I started to see the profits from another book release. So for book income, $978 on Amazon, $333 wide, $664 on YouTube, $594 on Patreon and Substack, for a total of $2,569, putting me $1,133 ahead, now running in the black, $3,546. And finally in December, I spent $4,021, and the big one here was that our car had a warning light appear on it. And we have a 10-year-old electric car, and this car has been so cheap to drive. The battery has not diminished at all in the whole time we've owned it, and it has needed like nothing. No oil changes, no repairs. It costs about a third of the amount to drive as a gas car, even a like pretty decent fuel economy one. So I am not complaining that this car needed a $1,900 repair at 10 years old when I haven't even had to pay for anything. All it's needed is one set of new tires and a couple of windshield wipers, like this whole time. So that's fine, but it was a bit of a pain. And of course it was Christmas, so I treated myself a little bit, and you can guess what I spent it on. $200 worth of records. And I also spent $50 buying my family cheese and chocolate. We don't really do Christmas in my family. We're very just, nobody needs anything. So all we do is buy little treats and call it a day, which I adore. Thank you, family, for being so awesome. My earnings in December, $750 on Amazon, $208 wide, $587 on YouTube, and $538 through Patreon and Substack. And I'm also working on an edit for one of my Discord members for $40, for a total of $2,123. So I ran a deficit this month of $1,798, which is very close to the exact cost of the car repair. And that means that I closed the month out with plus $1,748, which could go to paying some water bills and health insurance. And part of the reason my health insurance is so high is because on the side, we've been selling all of our stuff on eBay to move to Maryland. But I don't count that as my income because it's temporary and it's going into the Maryland fund unless like I have to use it. So clearly I did have to mostly pay my health insurance out of our eBay earnings. But other than that, I was sustainable. I managed to pay all the regular bills and all of the unexpected expenses, and I would have been able to pay at least the water bills. And the only thing that isn't in here is whatever health insurance would cost if I was only making a low income and whatever my taxes would be. So we're not quite there yet. But then there was also money from sponsorships and affiliates, which was more than $2,000. I won't tell you the exact number. It's not hugely more than $2,000, but it was more than $2,000. So my total income for the year was about $30,000 just from this relatively small, still, this is not a huge channel, relatively small channel, and releasing 2 books in a quirky fantasy world, and then my back catalog still bringing in some decent amount of income every year, but I'm not really promoting it or doing anything with it. Hey, I thought some of you might like to see the breakdown of the income for the year and how it shook out. About half of it was from my books and the other half was from YouTube related income sources. And how that looked was $7,857 Amazon, $3,099 wide, $4,015 audiobooks through Tantor. That was the book portion of it. If you're wondering how much my Hidden Lands books made, it was $2,390 on Amazon, so about a third of my income there. And wide, I didn't look because you have to look so many different places, but I'm assuming it's fairly similar. So, we're looking at like $3,400 for the Hidden Lands books. Obviously, it shows how difficult it is to make a living writing quirky fantasy, although I'm sure if I had done more marketing, this number would look better. But it is a good side income, and when you pair it with my romance novels and my YouTube channel, it's starting to look like some real money here. Then YouTube itself, YouTube ads and memberships, $7,460. Patreon and Substack, $6,409, and sponsorships somewhat over $2,000. So they're almost split equally in half, with Amazon and YouTube/Google forming half of my income. And that's how it's looking. And I gotta tell you, this was a lot more than I expected it to be. Last year was $22,500, so I was up $7,500 over last year, which was like, that's a really good trajectory to be on, because that means that if I continued to be on that path, next year I should be paying for everything just through this. Now, there's no guarantees in a job like this, so I don't know if that will actually be true or not, but I really like to see that things did go up that much. I'm sorry if there's a lot of paper crackling in this video. I'm a real paper girl, And the other thing that hardens me about that is that I was spending a lot of time on this eBay project, guys. Like, it is no joke. I was just looking at eBay and we sold 1,064 things this year on eBay. I sold a lot of my manga collection. I was still selling stuff for my father-in-law's estate, which I've been working on for 4 years. And my partner decided to kind of part with a lot of what he owns, and he's like never gotten rid of a thing. There were like 100 G.I. Joes from the 80s alone was a chunk of that 1,000 things. And that's just like one little box, right? And like one big box of like the vehicles and then one little case. So he just had, it's like he just kept pulling his whole childhood, his young adulthood, early anime collectibles, models, all kinds of stuff. There was always more to sell. Like, he's never bought a damn thing that isn't still worth money to this day. Now we're parting with all of it. So that is the chunk of money that will help us to move back to Maryland. But it also meant that was a serious part-time job for me. Getting 1,060 items, like, sorted out of our stuff, cleaned, photographed, prices researched, writing up listings, dealing with questions from buyers, pulling them back out of the basement wherever I stashed them, packing them up with all the bubble wrap, and then taking them to the post office, which is 30 minutes away, like twice a week. We're talking like 25 hours a week, every single week for the entire past year. So that means, like, if we say I'm working a 50-hour week, half of that would have been eBay. Just imagine when I have those 25 hours a week back to work on the YouTube channel and my books and marketing. Coco. I feel like at that point there is a very good chance that I can make like a realistic income for me, especially if I keep having months where I only spend $1,500 plus health insurance, taxes, water bill. So that's the annual income roundup. Obviously, that's one reason. This cat, I swear, she just keeps walking on my stand for my camera. That's one reason I talk a lot about trying to set yourself up for a frugal life when you want to be a creative, because none of this would be possible if I needed a lot of money. But since I'm pretty good at living on not a lot of income, it's working. And after my 2-year experiment, I've not dipped into very much. Well, I haven't dipped into any of my savings because of the eBay thing. But if we weren't doing the eBay thing, I wouldn't have spent very much of my savings, and I would definitely feel, as I do, very confident about continuing to go forward with this plan. So that is awesome. And I can't tell you how scary this was when I started it. So sometimes doing the scary, risky thing is a great idea. And I'm pretty cautious, so sometimes it does work out. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like more from me, you're certainly welcome to join my Patreon, Substack, or YouTube memberships. The Patreon and Substack members also get my free mailing list content occasionally. My members get 2 free bonus videos every month voted on by you guys, as well as access to my Discord server where we're having such a good time. I love the Discord server. If you'd like to read any of my books, there's a link in the description. The Hidden Lands books are the ones I always recommend first, but my free book of the month is Take Me Slowly, one of my darkest dark romance vampires. Thank you so much for watching and supporting me this year, and I can't wait for all the things I'm planning for 2026. So I will see you soon. Bye!